Yo, and welcome to the very first Guts and Style tutorial. Today we're going to be taking a look at how Cinema 4D works with After Effects. Now if you own After Effects, you have at least Cinema 4D Lite. So that enables you to take 3D elements that you create inside Cinema 4D and composite them into your After Effects projects. So this can be used for visual effects, motion graphics, whatever the hell you come up with inside of After Effects. When you take a look at this, just a simple composite of this 3D element sitting on top of this tree. And as you can see, we got a camera move and the element is tracking on top of the tree. We're going to be tracking the camera move as well as compositing in this 3D element using Cinema 4D. So first thing you want to do is create a new comp from the footage and just drop it on this little icon here, and you'll create a comp that has the exact same settings as your footage. From there, go to your tracker, which if this window isn't open, you go to Window Tracker to make it pop up, and you're going to track the camera. So once that's done tracking, you can just scrub through and look at all your lovely track points that have been created on your footage. As you can see, they lock down onto areas of good contrast. That's why it helps to have footage that has good contrast, especially in the foreground and background, so that it can really generate a good camera. Generally, what I like to do is start at the first frame and look for a track point and scrub through and make sure that that track point survives till the end of the footage. As you can see, this one does. And this is on the plane in which we want to place our 3D object. Now if you want to put it in the background somewhere, you would choose one of these, but we're going to go for foreground elements in this tutorial. So you just right click on that track point and you want to create a solid and camera. And you see down here in your layers that you now have a track solid and a 3D tracker camera. And let's take a look at this solid. Hit S for scale and scale it up so we can see it pretty well. That's a good size. So now we see we have this perfectly tracked solid, and that's going to help us locate where we need to place our text in 3D space when we switch to Cinema. So in order to get this project inside of Cinema, with this composition highlighted, we're going to go to File, Export, Maxon Cinema 4D Exporter. And we're going to put it in a place that makes sense. So put it with the rest of your project. I always have a Cinema 4D file set aside. And I'm just going to name it Track from AE. And it just generated a Cinema 4D file. So, same thing in here. I have a Cinema 4D folder. And what I'm going to do is take my Track from AE file and drop it in my Cinema 4D folder. And so now that track that we made is inside of our project. And we can just drop it in like we would any other element for Cinema 4D. And right now you can see it's not much to look at. I'm going to turn off this track solid. We don't need it anymore. And so what you're seeing now is the Cinema 4D version sitting on top of our After Effects files. And that solid right there is coming from Cinema 4D. Now right now it's set on software rendering. If we want it to look like Cinema 4D, with a final render, we switch to standard to get rid of the grid. And so this is actually a 3D element right here. All right, and we want to use the comps camera, not Cinema 4D's camera. All right. Okay, we had a Cinema 4D file up here in our project browser, and we are going to click on it and edit original, and it'll open it up inside of Cinema 4D. And there you can see our solid. If you hit play, there you have our camera movement from After Effects. So you know that the track will be there. Okay, so the first thing I do is switch from the 3D tracker camera back to the default camera so that I can move the camera wherever I need it to be. And we can see our solids way back here. What we want to do is create some text. So if you click on the spline and go down to text, you'll see your text is created here. But problem with that is nowhere near our solid, so that means it's not going to show up correctly inside After Effects. So we need to take the position of this solid and paste it onto the text position. And we do that by track solid. You click on it here and it gives you, go down to coordinates, and this is your location of that solid. So you can just click the X and shift click the Z, Command C to copy, and then go up to your text and Command V to paste. And now your text is sitting on top of this solid. Alright, so easy way to get that full view is just hit the letter S, and now it's center frame. You can just zoom out a little bit. So now that we have that, we don't need this track solid anymore. So I'm just going to turn that off. You click the check mark up here. Alright, and then I'm going to my text layer and come down here, you click on object and switch. You can change your text to whatever you want. So and whatever font. Yeah. Go with something easier to see. Alright, so as you can see, we just have a little outline of some text. That's not a 3D object yet, so that doesn't do us much good. So the way we change this into a 3D object inside Cinema is we come up here to your NURBS and you're going to choose Extrude NURBS. So you have Extrude NURBS, and then you're going to drop the text inside of that. And as you can see, our text got extruded. I mean, it's still ugly as sin, but you know, it's 3D, so there you go. So to control your extrude NURBS, you just click on it, and let's say you wanted thicker text. Under object and movement, you can see you got 20 centimeters over there by default, and you can either decrease it or increase it to make thicker text. You come to the caps, and as you can see, if I zoom in on this text, these are very sharp corners. The caps round those a little bit, so I do like a fillet cap, and you see now we got a little extra dimension to it. And so we can add some steps. The more steps you add, the more round it becomes. and you can tweak the radius. You can play with all these settings, and you get different results. But now you just got that added element, and it looks a little better to me. So the next thing we need to do is add in some materials, because right now the thing is just gray and it's not very pretty. So we can go into new materials and just double click that, and it's going to open up your material editor. And so under color, I'm going to go with white and do it very simple. For luminance, you want to add a little bit of luminance, probably about 15 on that. Alright, so you need to take that material and drop it on your NURBS, and now you can actually read this thing. And now hit Command S to save, or file, save. And every time you save inside of Cinema, it will update in After Effects. So switch back to After Effects and take a look. Now, as you can see, that is very tiny. So if we switch back to Cinema, we can actually turn back to our 3D tracker camera, which shows us that that is a very small piece of text. So once you switch back to the text layer, just increase the height and vertical spacing is kind of weird. So tweak it however you need to tweak it. Command S, go back to After Effects. And you can even scrub through inside After Effects. And you see that your 3D text is moving with the tree. Now, if you didn't even want this to sit on the tree, you can move it to the side and just have it floating out in space as well. So all you have to do is just drag it over, Command S to save, back to After Effects, and there you go. So now it's floating out in space. Alright, now I'm gonna undo that, put it back where it was. So now that we got everything laid out, we can just start making it kind of look cool. One of the things you'll see in the original video was I had this little wood grain box around it. It's pretty simple to do, so we can start by making that. And what I did was I went to the cube. I pretty much make everything out of cubes. As you can see, when you click it, the cube shows up here, but you don't see it. That's because it's not in the location that we're at. So we can do the same thing that we did before. We can copy and paste the position of the text onto the cube so that the cube will be right there next to the text. So with the text highlighted, click the X, shift click the Z, copy, and paste. And so now that cube is right there. We can scale it up by hitting T. And now you got these bars to increase the size. Just click out here in this dead space and drag, and it'll start getting bigger. So you can kind of see that we have all kinds of craziness happening right now. Extrude that a little more. Alright, so on the cube, we want to get this shape to kind of be lined up with this text. So middle click the middle mouse button to bring up all four of your views, and hit S on the top view. And as you can see, if you middle click on this view, it'll go full screen. As you can see, you got your text right here and your cube is right here. First thing we're going to do is come up here and turn it into a polygon by clicking that button. Now we can scale each axis individually. So we're going to just make it a flat box. You hit E to move it around. You hit T to transform or change the size. So you can see my text is here. I just make the box a little bit bigger and make it a little thicker. Okay, and now I'm going to switch to my front view. Zoom out some. Alright. And we can see that's what it looks like, dead center from the front. So we want to make it a little bit larger than that because we're going to do an extrude in a second. Alright. And now we can switch back by clicking that middle mouse button and going back to perspective view. And this is what we have now. Alright, so now we want to create this little border around the front. So, in order to do that, you're going to switch to face selection and select the front face of this board. Make sure that's the only thing that's selected. And we right click, extrude inner, and you're just going to drag to the left until you have the right amount of lip on the sides. Alright? So, with that still selected, you're going to right click again and extrude, and you're going to drag to the left again to push it in. So now you just get a slight bit more detail without a lot of effort. And if you look at it from the front, that's what you really have. So if I hit Command S and go back to After Effects, you can see we have that sitting there, but there's no texture on it yet. So we're going to add that. Alright, go back to Cinema, and we can add a new material. So go to Create, New Material. On this new material, I just double click it to open up the material editor. And under Color, you have this bar that says Texture. Click this button here. I had a little picture of some wood grain that I wanted to use. So, yeah, just a JPEG. It doesn't have to be anything like ridiculous or anything. Just a JPEG of some wood grain and hit Open. Yes. And so now you have this wood grain texture, and you can play with the brightness of it. And, you know, you got all these settings, same old, same old. And I can just drag and drop that on top of this cube. Alright, so now, if I hit save, go back, we now have that wood grain sitting there. Looks kind of weird, it's kind of dusty. So, you can double click on the material, bring this back up. And we can turn down the specular. Save. And there we go. It's more of a natural color for wood grain. Alright, now these letters, we can make those pop a little more. So we switch back to, one of the things I didn't mention is you want to keep track of your materials by naming them. So with your materials selected, you can come under Basic And we know that this white is what we're using for our text, so just name it text. And for this wood grain, we know that is the box behind it, so we could just name it box or wood grain, whatever you want to call it. The important thing is that you know what all your materials are being used for. So we're going to add a little bit of reflection to our text. So just double click on text and it'll bring up your material editor, and we're going to click the checkbox for reflection, and let's go to reflection. You see where it says texture. This is where we're going to do kind of like a fake reflection. So we're just going to add in our reflection here by clicking this. Alright, and I took a screenshot of the footage just to kind of replicate a reflection, and it'll kind of look like it belongs in the scene. So I'm going to select that screenshot and hit yes. Now it's just reflecting what was in the shot instead of something else. So the key to this is just subtlety, so we could just turn it down a little bit. Hit X, Command S to save, and switch back to After Effects. And now we got a little bit of that reflection going on. Looks pretty decent. Now we need to add some lights, which I think we can get by with just one light on this one. Because as you can see in the original video on the tree, the sun is basically coming from this direction and it's kind of nailing this tree. So we can do the same here because we got pretty hard fall off as far as shadows go because of all of the shade. So we can achieve that by coming back to cinema, coming into lights. We're going to add a single light, which, let's see, where is that at? Just so I could get those in the same neighborhood, I am going to paste the position of this cube onto the light. Okay, and hit S. And so now we have the light somewhere in the vicinity. Alright, and we're going to switch back to the selection tool. Pull it out. And we want it coming from this direction. Let me pop the text out a little more. Alright, so I'm going to put this light into position using my top view. So I'm going to switch back, select the light, and so the sun was kind of over here in relation to the text, and we can zoom out on our perspective view, and we can raise the light up a little bit. Alright. Actually, we need this to, let's switch this into a spotlight. As you can see, there's a spotlight. You end up with this little cone, and you just kind of direct it. It's like you're lighting in a studio. So you use R to rotate the light around on the X, Y, and Z axis. Alright. And then you want to control your shadows. So with your light selected, you come down to general, and I usually go with soft shadows. Ray trace might slow you down a bit. Come down to your shadow controls. All that looks good. And under details, this is where you get to control how the light falls off as far as your inner and outer cones. So you can see when you tweak it how that light's falling off. Command S and go back to After Effects just to kind of get an idea. So you can see that looks ridiculous. So let's go back. Push the text in some. You can see the lighting is pretty flat right here. So we want it to kind of mimic the way the light from the sun filters through the trees. So you got like little areas of shadow and light, and just kind of to mimic that look. We can do that on our sign, and it's not very difficult. We come back to cinema, and with the light selected, we'll go down here and click on noise, and we're going to add illumination noise and make sure it's set on hard turbulence. Now, you hit save and you'll be able to see like right away how that adds in that little bit of, it looks like light coming through the trees type shadows. Then we can make the brighter spots a little brighter though. So back in cinema, just raise that up some, raise up the brightness right there. And let's take a look. Alright, that looks pretty good. Once you're happy with what you did in cinema, you can come back into After Effects, and we're just going to add one more thing to it just to make it kind of mesh well with the footage. And so just like any other layer, you just select it, and we're going to go to color correction and curves. Oops, turn off the caps lock. And we're just going to add a contrast curve because we kind of need to match the shadows in the original footage. And just bring them down a little bit. And keep your highlights almost in the same place. Just add a little more contrast. And there you have it. Now all we got to do is render this out. Alright, and we can just take a look at it. And there you have it. As you can see, the noise is moving, kind of simulating the light coming through the tree branches. You can tweak it, make it better. And yeah, and that should be a decent starting point for anybody looking to add cinema into their After Effects workflow. I am Frank Anderson. This has been my first tutorial. Hopefully you liked it. If you didn't, I'm sure I'll hear about it in the comments. And your feedback is greatly appreciated. Thanks.
I can't live the rest of my life up there because you think the world's going to end.
Hope is the only way to save all life on Earth.
Helena?
I can't go with you, Jacob.